The Legend of Zelda series is famous for many reasons. Cool items, atmospheric dungeons, and of course, epic boss battles. Today, we're going to be ranking every boss battle in the 3D Zelda games. So let's get into it. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Ryan here from Game Essays, back with another tier list. As you saw in the intro, we are looking at the boss battles in the 3D Zelda games. So we're talking about Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild. If you enjoy this Zelda content, I encourage you to check out my other Zelda tier lists and reviews. It's all there. And if you enjoy the video and the channel as a whole, I encourage you to subscribe and like the video. It's a brand new channel. We're less than a year old, so every little bit helps, and it's nice to see this channel grow, and I appreciate everyone's support so far, but let's get into it. Okay, starting off with Goma from Ocarina of Time, inside the Deku Tree, of course. Goma gets an A for me. So this is technically, it's the first boss battle in a 3D Zelda game, and I think for many reasons it's iconic. One, the fact that you have to look up to initiate the fight. This was the first time the developers were dealing with 3D boss battles, so they wanted to kind of take advantage of the 3D space. So having Goma climbing up on the ceiling, it really utilized 3D in a cool way. So that's one reason I like Goma. It's a great intro boss. The second reason is more like the fun, just wackiness of the N64 version of Ocarina. The fact that you can kill Goma in about 3 seconds if you jump slash with the Deku stick before you start the fight. Then you can just go up and crouch stab with your regular sword and do massive damage. So that is just really fun to just destroy Goma in like 2 seconds. So that's another reason why I really enjoy the fight. Moving on to King Dango, I'm going to put this at a B. We've seen even in, the original Legend of Zelda, there was the Dodongos and you put the bomb in their mouth. It's been a staple for a while. This was nothing particularly new. So it gets a B because we see this fight kind of pop up in similar ways throughout the series, but I think here it's not as offensive. It's nothing, it's not bad. It's not amazing. I think it's fine there. Bernade. I'm going to put Bernade also as a B, but above Dodongo. This is actually, I find this fight annoying. A lot of the boomerang fights can be really annoying. This is where like camera angles and stuff really hurt on the N64 version. But I have it as a B because I respect the hell out of this fight, because I actually think this is one of the hardest boss fights in Ocarina of Time. There's a lot of like later boss fights that are kind of a cakewalk, but this fight, I think, for one of the child dungeons, I don't think it messes around at all. So I think it deserves a spot at B. Phantom Ganon just gets an S tier from the Forest Temple. This is just, Forest Temple, you guys know, if you've seen my other tier list, I already love the Forest Temple. And of course, the boss too just nails it. Everything about it, the atmosphere, you walk in, you see all the paintings, you try to leave, the gate comes up. The fact that the fight has Phantom Ganon going in and out of the different paintings, so you have that phase, and then you have the classic Zelda tennis phase. So everything just comes together and is one of the coolest boss fights in any Zelda game. So for that, I think it belongs in the S tier. Volvega, I'm going to put as a C. It's just not one of my favorite fights. There's really, it's kind of the whack-a-mole thing, but it can just be really annoying and really slow, and I feel like most of the time you're just kind of sitting there. The hammer is really fun to use, and when you actually do get to come up and whack Volvagia, it is fun, but yeah, there's just kind of too much waiting around. I don't hate it, so that's why it's not getting a D, but yeah, it is a little slow. Morpha, I think, is even kind of a little bit worse. I am actually going to put Morpha at a D. This is one fight where, I mean, if you have the big Goron sword, it is easy to it's easier to trap Morpha in the corner and just destroy it right away. But it's another one of those like really slow, and I think it's more slow than Volvigia and more annoying than Volvigia. So I think it's probably the worst boss fight in Ocarina of Time. And for that reason, I think it deserves to be at a D. Then we have Bongo Bongo. I'm gonna put Bongo Bongo at an A. This is, this is another similar boss fight of like the two hands and then the middle piece that you kind of see come up a lot in Zelda games. But this is one of the OGs, I guess, and the fact that it has an extra element with you needing the Lens of Truth, and also the fact that you're bouncing around, so you have to use the hover boots. It's much more than just the typical, hit the hands and then hit the middle piece kind of boss fight that we see in many video games. And you also just have the poison element outside of like the bongo drum, and it can just be a really tricky boss fight if you're not playing to your best. If you're kind of half-assing it, then this boss can really catch you. So I definitely respect Bongo Bongo, and I throw him at an A. Twin Rova, I will put at a high B. The reason is I think the first phase can be really frustrating with the targeting. A lot of times you try and crouch with the shield to reflect the beam and hit the other witch. It can just be super frustrating. And then the second phase, it's cool, but I think it's a little too easy. I think the coolness factor is what keeps it at a B. Otherwise, as far as like an actual fight itself, it is just not super interesting. Because a lot of time, once you kind of figure out what you need to do, it's a situation where you're just sitting there and you're waiting. And if the wrong beam shows up, it's not that hard to dodge it. So a lot of times the second phase is actually a lot easier, and the first phase is just really frustrating. But coolness factor keeps it at a B. Otherwise, it could be a lot lower. Then we get to the Ganondorf fight. I think the Ganondorf fight is honestly an S tier. I know it's also more Zelda tennis and things like that, but the fact that you can't use Navi for targeting, the floor is collapsing, you have to aim the light arrows, and just, again, being like super epic and being in the tower. I love this fight, and I think it's definitely the better half of the final fight of the game. Certain like different phases are obviously like split up here. So now we move on to Ganon, and honestly, the Ganon fight, I feel like I'll put it at a C. This Ganon fight is just, the epicness is the only thing that keeps it from being a D, basically, because this Ganon fight is honestly lame. It's a lot easier than the Ganondorf part, in my opinion. And really, it's just, if it wasn't, obviously if you get hit, you take a lot of damage, but you have like double defense, and you probably have fairies and all this stuff at this point, so it just ends up being really not that challenging. And you can just kind of roll in and out of his legs. You can throw down Deku Nuts, so you don't even really have to aim at his tail, and then you just take him out with the Master Sword at the end. It's just kind of a letdown of a fight, to be honest. Okay, so that's Ocarina of Time. So if you want to just kind of get an image of what that looks like just for that game alone, there you go. But we're moving on to Majora's Mask, and we have Adalwa, I think. I have a name guide here in case I forget, because there are some, Ocarina Majora's, I feel like I know the boss names, but once we get to Wind Waker and beyond, it gets a little hazy on a lot of the boss names. Anyway, Adalwa, I will, I'll probably give like a low B. It's not the most memorable boss fight, but I do like that there's multiple ways that you can fight him. It's not like there's just one way to, and I think that's a cool trend with a lot of Majora's Mask fights, is that there's no just one way to beat a boss. It's kind of like whatever strategy you want to implement, and I think that's pretty cool. So I think Adolwa, like I said, not super memorable, but you can, you can fight him like Child Link, or I think there's strategies with Deku Link. And I'm focusing mainly on the N64 version of this game. I have not played the 3DS version. Then we go to Got or Goat. I'm not 100% sure which one it is, but Goat to me gets an S tier. This is just straight up fun and cool boss fight where you get to play as Goron Link and you just, spin as Goron Link and just keep trying to crash into Got. And again, versatility. If you want to stand back and just spam arrows instead, while Got turns around and tries to shoot lightning at you, you can do that. You can fight him as regular Link, or you can fight him as Goron Link. And again, that versatility is awesome, but I think the Goron way is just really, really fun. So that's the way I do. Georg from the Great Bay Temple. This to me, I think, is a D. This fight is just, it's annoying. It's such a pain in the ass, and it's super challenging. It's better than Morpha, I would say, but it's like I get what they're trying to do, but just because it's hard doesn't mean it should be like ranked high. I think it's just really, really annoying. Yeah, Georg, the fact like it's just I can't stand it. Like the Zora swimming is good in a lot of ways in the original N64 Majora's Mask, but having to kind of like swim back up and then Georg is just ramming that middle platform and knocking you back in the water, it's a super frustrating fight, and I'm not a big fan of it. Looking at Twin Mold, this is another fight I'm really just not a big fan of. I don't think I'd put it at the level of Georg, but I'd probably put it as a C. As the, you really have to prepare if you want to have fun with like the Giant's Mask with this fight. It's the only place you can use the Giant's Mask, but you'll run. It's very easy if you didn't prepare a potion to not run out of magic, and you run out of magic in this fight, you're really screwed. And then you're stuck trying to just spam arrows, and it's so annoying. So if you don't prepare correctly for this fight, it can be super annoying. Trying to hit him with the arrows is just so frustrating. So for that, I think Twin Molds is stays in kind of the low C tier. So Majora's Mask fight, we actually have all three incarnations here. So there's Majora's Mask, Majora's Incarnation, and Majora's Wrath. But altogether, I really just put them all as an A. It is a tough fight. Most of the time, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I straight up use a I just straight up use oh my god, Fierce Deity Link all the time in this fight. But I have fought Majora. I have fought him straight up, of course, with many fairies. And I still don't know how you I don't know if there's any way to avoid damage from Majora's Wrath. If someone knows how to take no hits against the Majora's Wrath phase, please let me know in the comments, because that has to be one of the most brutal fights in any Zelda game, in my opinion. So I respect the hell out of the fight. It's really original. Each form, it's really not like many Zelda boss fights, and it's just very bizarre and cool. So for that, I put it in an A. Then we have Goma from Wind Waker. Let me pull up the Wind Waker names just in case I forget here. This one, I mean, I'd probably put it as like maybe just a high C. It's not bad, but it's not that interesting. It's kind of cool to grab Valu's tail and then have the ceiling come down. But other than that, it's just like not super interesting, but like again, not bad. So I will keep it there. Then we have Calidemos from the Forbidden Woods in the Wind Waker. This one, sorry if you can hear a car alarm in the background, by the way, but I'm just going to move on. We have Calidemos from Forbidden Woods, as I said. This one, I'm probably going to put at a... it's not... is it better than Bernade? Yeah, it's a little bit better than Bernade. So I guess I put it here on the B tier. There's one thing that really brings this up for me, and I think it wasn't even discovered until maybe, several years after Wind Waker even came out, was that you can win this fight by taking forest water from the Forest Haven, plowing through the dungeon, because the water only lasts 30 minutes. But if you pour that forest water on Cali, it will instantly kill the boss, which I think is really cool, and that element definitely brings it up. Otherwise, it is very similar to Bernade. You get the boomerang in the dungeon just like you do in Jabu Jabu, and it's kind of about hitting like these top tentacle things or whatever with your boomerang. This case, though, there's a lot more of them. They can grow back, and you can also target multiple of the vines or whatever they are. So I think it's a bit more interesting than Bernade. So I think I'll rank it just slightly higher. Okay, Godan. I had to look up that name. Godan, see, this is one where I guess I just put it as like lower on the B, I guess, but this is another one of these like kind of, it's sort of like Bongo Bongo, but I think it's less interesting than Bongo Bongo. It's very run of the mill. But I have it as a B because it can be fun to do as well. So not much else to say on that one. The Helmerock King, I'll probably put this at I wouldn't call it an A, but I put it on like the high B tier. It's a cool fight in the way of like this. The Helmerock King just looks cool, but a lot of times he just kind of flies around and it's super easy. Skullhammer can be fun, so it is like satisfying, but it kind of lacks a little bit of that challenge, and again can just be a little bit slow. But like coolness factor definitely brings it up. Okay, we have Jalhal for the Earth Temple. This one I will put as a C tier. It's not that great. It's kind of just, you throw him into the spikes and then he spawns into like a million different pose spirits, and then you gotta keep killing them over and over again. It doesn't get much more difficult. The only thing is you have to use that mirror shield initially, and then the light starts moving a little bit faster, so getting under it to reflect and hit him gets a little bit more challenging, but it's kind of just doing the same thing over and over again. It's not that interesting. It's not terrible, but it's not super interesting. So this tier list forgot Moldark, who is the he is the Wind Temple boss. So this Leviathan from Skyward Sword, I'm going to be using in place of Moldark. Maybe I'll just just note that that's a placeholder for Moldark. I don't know how this tier list forgot it, but hey, you know what? I wasn't going to make a completely new one because as you can see, there's a lot of images to upload. And as far as I can only remember one Leviathan fight anyway, and it looks like this guy put it here twice because if you can see on my screen, next to the Giriham and Demise over here to the left is basically the thing that is the Leviathan fight. So he kind of put the Leviathan twice and not Moldark. But anyway, Moldark I will definitely put as I'd put it as a high B. The music alone has to bring Moldark up, right? It is super fun, but yeah, Moldark, it's like utilizing the hook shot. It's going underground and through the sand, and you got to pull them up, and then there's the little baby Moldarks that get in the way. It's kind of a cool fight, and it's one of the better fights in Majora's Mask. Now we get to Puppetganon. Puppetganon, I would have to say, I think Puppetganon is definitely in the A tier. It's a super challenging fight. It's got multiple phases. You got to respect the hell out of the snake phase. It is super challenging, but the whole thing to it is pretty cool. And then Ganondorf fights, I think I will also put up in the A tier. The Ganondorf fight, the imagery alone is super epic. You have Hyrule flooding as as you're playing it. The only thing that brings it down a little bit is once you kind of know what you're doing in the Ganondorf fight, it can be really, really short, and that part's a little bit disappointing. So I think Puppetganon slightly edges it out just because of the challenge factor and the intensity of it. Whereas the Ganondorf fight, I don't think sometimes it's got the aesthetic, but it doesn't necessarily have that like in the tense feeling. Anyway, we're on to Twilight Princess. What is this one called? Diababa. Honestly, this one's, I barely remember it. I know you use the Gale Boomerang, but it just was not super interesting. I think it's probably better than Georg, so I'll put it as a high D. But this was just this is where Twilight Princess bosses, there's some hit or miss going on. I think there was a lot of misses. Then we get to Phyrus. Now, again, this is one where the imagery is really awesome for Phyrus, but the boss fight itself, not super interesting. I guess I'd put it. I guess I'll put it as like a high C. I just always think of, now I'm just thinking of like the drink, but it is, some juice boxes, whatever, Ecto Cooler. But no, Phyrus is, it's just a high C. Like, it looks like it should be a much cooler fight than it is. And that's just kind of the end of the day. And again, similar kind of situation with Morpheal. I think Morpheal is, I don't think he ever even like hits you in the second phase. Like, the whole point is to just latch on him and keep stabbing the eye. It's very like Shadow of the Colossus. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but I think it's like, I guess it's like a low B. It's slightly better than Phyrus in my opinion. But yeah, Twilight Princess, great dungeons, bosses as I'm looking at it. Some of them really oof. But hey, Star-Lord, baby. One of the best fights in all of Zelda. I even probably put it above Ganondorf here. Star-Lord, right? That's his name. Yeah, Star-Lord with the spinner. Even if people say, oh, it's super easy or whatever, it's still so much fun, and I look forward to it every single time that I play. So for that alone, Star-Lord, easy S tier. Easy S tier. Then we go to Blizzetta of my favorite dungeon in Twilight Princess, and that would be Snow Peak Ruins. This fight, I think it's fine. You have like the ice shards and everything, and you gotta use the ball and chain. I think it's a lot of fun, honestly, and I would put it. I think it's not the most amazing fight in the world, so I'd put it as like a high A. I mean a high B rather. Goma, not super interesting. Kind of has a funny moment at the end when there's only like, I forget, like I think there's like one little spider left or something. But for some reason, everyone says it's the easiest fight in the world, but I kind of suck at it sometimes. But yeah, it's okay. I probably put it as C tier. I don't think it's D tier, but yeah. Then we get to Argarok. This can be a pretty intense fight, and is definitely one of the better Twilight Princess fights. I don't know if I like it as much as Blizzetta, but I think it deserves to be like a high B tier for me. Zant, I actually really like this fight a lot. I think Zant is actually an S tier for me. I do like that you're kind of going between the different phases, and even if some of those phases aren't like the best thing in the world, but even some of the mini bosses phases that he's jumping to, and then also the last phase at Hyrule Castle, I think is pretty epic. So Zant's actually one of my favorite fights. Okay, and then we go to Zelda in Twilight Princess. It's really short, but it's cool. It's super cool. So I guess I'll put it as an A tier. Beastganon, yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess Beastganon's like a B. Definitely it's not my least favorite phase. The next one, I guess, the fact that they put every phase of Twilight Princess Ganondorf is kind of interesting. But yeah, I think it's fine as B. Then we get to the horseback phase. I never really like doing that, so I'm gonna throw that in D tier. And then the sword fight, kind of epic conclusion in Twilight Princess. That's gotta be an S tier. Ganondorf and Link just Ring of Fire, straight up sword fight. It's a lot of fun. Definitely an S tier. Above Zant, probably not, because it's only like one phase of a fight, but it's pretty cool. Okay, we get to Giriham. We're on to Skyward Sword now. Giriham, I always get kind of confused at what to do this one, but it is a pretty cool fight, and I would definitely put it in the B tier. It's, kind of having an actual fighting another human. You don't get to do that often in Zelda. I mean, I know he's not a human, but like humanoid, you don't really get that too often. So, and I think it worked well for the first boss with the, the motion controls. Then we get to Sculdera. And this is kind of where we get to we're kind of over the whole Dango thing. But it is kind of fun, so I'd probably put it above like Fyrus. No, I wouldn't. I'll just put it as like a C. Not super interesting. And then, yeah, it's just basically the Dango fight over again with a ramp. Then we have Moldark from Linearu Mining Facility. And this just feels like the fact that this is a mini boss later really hurts this. I guess I put it at like the low C. It's just it's really boring to me. Yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say. Okay, the Imprisoned. For me, a lot of, do I go F for the Imprisoned? At the first Imprisoned, I will put as a D. The second Imprisoned can be an F. And then the third Imprisoned, I'll also make a D. I didn't enjoy this fight. I didn't like that you had to do it 3 times. I guess so first phase I'll give a D because it, I didn't like it, but it wasn't horrible. The second time, it wasn't that different from the first time, and I already didn't enjoy it, so it gets an F. And then the third time, I'll give it a D again because it at least got a little bit more interesting. So there you go. Now we get to Colloctus. I think this is going to be an S tier. This is probably the best fight in Skyward Sword, aside from maybe the final battle. It's just a really cool fight, and it's super intense. I remember this one taking me a while to do, but like taking him apart and then having to use his own sword to destroy him. It's a really cool fight, and I think it is the fight that probably best utilized the motion controls and made it really fun and interesting, like whipping down the pieces of him and then using his sword. Really, really epic and intense fight on a fantastic dungeon. Then we have I'm looking over here at the names of the bosses, by the way. Tentalis and Tentalis. I will give it a high C grade. Now, everyone hates the look of this boss, and I'm with everybody on it. I do love the intro to it at the end of the sand ship, where when you're at the bottom, you're in the cabin of the boat or wherever part of the ship, and then you're like making your way out and you're having to cut through the tentacles. Really cool. Then you see that and you're like, seriously, we got some Monsters Inc. stuff going on with this boss. But it has some interesting parts to it. If they just made him look cooler, this would have been such a better fight, but it really brings it down and just completely destroys it. And it can be annoying just to hit his eye with the arrow, the way he moves around and the motion controls. It can be a little frustrating. So I think it's fine there. What the hell is it called? Bilo site. I remember just hating this. This is a flying fight in Skyward Sword. I'll give it a low D. It's super frustrating because you get this charge move with the bird and just trying to motion control and hit the different eyes or whatever. I just remember being really pissed off about it. Then we have the Giriham fight. I think this Giriham fight towards the end of the game is an A. It's really intense, a really cool fight. Again, the humanoid fights, we don't get them often, but I think they can be really cool when we have them. The Demise fight, I think is also pretty good and can be really intense. And I always get my ass whooped and forget the strategies, but I will give Demise also an A. I think it's really an interesting, cool sword fight that I think they did a good job on. And again, it's a great use of motion controls. Finally, we are at Breath of the Wild. And we get to the Blight Ganons. Water Blight Ganon. I think Water Blight Ganon's fine. I'd say like it's a low B. And I'm doing it as like most people did this one first, and I think this was good as like a first boss fight. The other ones just aren't as interesting to me. Like Wind Blight Ganon, it's just not super memorable. They all kind of blend together. So I would probably just give Wind Blight Ganon like a low C, and then Fire Blight Ganon again. These two really just don't feel that different to me. And then I'll just skip to Thunderblight Ganon, and then we'll get to Koga here. But Thunderblight Ganon, I do think is better, and I will put up as like, I'll put in a higher position. Like I will put Thunderblight Ganon above like Helmerock King. Like this is a legitimately intense and difficult boss fight, and having to use the your magnesis to move those electric pillars. There's a lot more that went into this one, in my opinion. So I definitely think it deserves to be in a high B tier. Koga, it's an amusing fight, but it's very simple and basic. And for a game where you're just begging for something different for a boss fight, Koga is nice to have, and I appreciate him in the game. I'd probably just throw him up here as like a C tier. It's a little bit too easy. It feels like it's a little too short, but I'm glad it's there because otherwise we're just dealing with a bunch of Blight Ganons. Then we have Calamity Ganon. For some reason we don't have his boar phase, but we have every phase of the Twilight Princess. But I will put Calamity Ganon as a whole. I think it's, honestly, I'd probably put it as a D. It's better than the horse phase of Twilight Princess, but Calamity Ganon, the regular first phase is, I mean, I guess if you haven't taken on any divine beasts, it's a more respectable fight because of the intensity and taking on all the Blight Ganons and everything. But otherwise, if you just do it straight up, if you've already taken down the divine beast and you fight Calamity Ganon, it's not that interesting of a fight. The first phase, it's definitely harder, but then when you switch to the boar phase outside, it is just like, it's not even like a boss fight anymore. You're just kind of going through the motions. So I think it's a big letdown for a final fight. But there you go. We just did every single 3D Zelda boss fight. We didn't do mini bosses and stuff, but still, I think we covered a lot of ground, and I'm happy. I'm pretty comfortable with how this list came out, but make sure to let me know what you guys think. What were your favorite 3D Zelda bosses? This is where I stand. But again, if you enjoy this content, go check out my other Zelda tier list. Go check out my Phantom Hourglass review. I also have a Wind Waker review in the same style that I did the Phantom Hourglass one. So a very long form rating of Wind Waker. That's going to be coming out somewhat soon. It's a lot to work on, but that will be out soon. But yeah, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.